Andy Mack, this is a live look at the White House. I know a lot of people within the Biden administration curious about what happened today in the Supreme Court as they're hearing cases relating to that student debt forgiveness. We're going to be joined now by attorney Andrew Lieb. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Of course, there were two kind of separate cases in the Supreme Court relating to this debt forgiveness. What did we learn today, and what was your biggest takeaway from the hearings today?
I think we learned that this program's got a lot of problems because the conservative justices, led by Justice Roberts, is talking about how much this program's going to cost. And I'll tell you, that's very relevant. He's saying it's going to be $500 billion. Estimates say $400 billion. But he's going there. And why does that matter that he said it 3 times? Because the court looks at this concept called the major questions doctrine and says when it's a major question, that's the domain of Congress, not the executive branch. And by making this such a major issue, it's looking like they're going to strike down this law. And it's probably not going to give the debt forgiveness that everyone was hoping for.
And there's been a lot of discussion, like you said, also with that, but also with the term standing. What does standing in your mind, and how does it factor into this Supreme Court hearing?
Actually, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, she actually went right into standing, and that might be one of the ways that the case can be saved for the Biden administration. Standing means the right to sue. So, Andy, if I see you get in an accident and someone hits you, I can't sue. You can sue. You have to be the person aggrieved to be able to sue. And really what's going on in the first case, this Biden case, what's going on is that 6 states are suing the Biden administration. And Amy Coney Barrett's saying, why are you suing? How are you aggrieved? And they counter and they say, listen, we have this entity that services the loans and we make money from the loans. And Coney Barrett seemed to say, so why didn't they sue today? Signaling that she doesn't believe they have standing, and that could be a threshold issue that bounces this on a technical ground.
Definitely. It could be interesting because we're just beginning to hear the hearings. Give me a little bit of sense of the other side, because like you said, in this case with standing, with those 6 Republican-led states, they're following the lawsuit, but there's also a separate one relating to it as well with borrowers following a lawsuit. What did we learn today with that, and how many grounds did they have in this Supreme Court as well?
Yeah, that's DOE v. Brown, that second one that you're talking about. And there's these 2 borrowers, and what they're alleging is, hey, we weren't qualified to get full debt relief. And you see, when there's a law that's made by the executive branch, there's this thing called a comment period. You see, the executive branch can't make regulations without allowing public comment. And they're alleging that the HEROES Act does not exempt, that's the underlying statute from Congress, it does not exempt the comment period. And I think they may be onto something here, because whenever the executive branch makes a law, we get to comment as the public. They say they didn't follow the Administrative Procedure Act. And again, a technical argument, but that could be a reason that this law failed.
And I think a lot of people are maybe a little confused because the HEROES Act dates back quite some time, and it also relates to the COVID-19. Give me a little bit of breakdown on what you see from the HEROES Act and how maybe, give me a little bit of context and what that means for people when they hear it in this context with the Supreme Court and student loan forgiveness.
So the HEROES Act's from 2003, actually, and it's about ability of the Secretary of the Department of Education, and here's the key word, to waive a provision, And Justice Kavanaugh really picked up on that today, and he said, listen, in the sense of a national emergency, yes, the Secretary of Education can waive a provision. But Kavanaugh said, really, is waiving canceling debt? He's a strict constructionist. He says, look at the words, and they mean what they say they mean. And the HEROES Act says it's a national emergency, and even Biden has said we're out of the national emergency. So the question is, and this is called enabling legislation, when Congress passed the HEROES Act in 2003, did they envision that they were allowing the executive branch to pass regulations like we are today with COVID and actually cancel student debt? That's what's before the court.
It is very interesting because there's, like we saw outside of the Supreme Court, a lot of public in favor of this happening. Some 40 million Americans potentially could be helped by this. How much is the public pressure? How much is just the fact that so much of the public is invested in this? How does that maybe impact anything at all?
Well, Andy, we have to start off with the fact that politically, overwhelming public is in support of doing this. Yes, there's a lot of people saying, hey, I didn't go to college, I shouldn't have to pay. But if you look at the polling, it's the public's overwhelmingly in favor of doing something about student debt. But you see, the justices of the Supreme Court aren't politicians, no matter how much we want to make them into them. They're going to make it on a technical ground, and they're going to make a decision that impacts not just this case, but other cases. We use the word standing. We use the word Administrative Procedure Act. We talked today about enabling legislation and the major questions doctrine. None of these concepts are particular to student loan. They're about how the different branches of government operate together. So the Supreme Court's going to be making decisions just on procedure. But for the public, if you believe or don't believe in getting student debt being relieved, go to your representative. This is the domain of Congress. That's who should be doing something.
Correct. Yeah, that's what a lot of people potentially saying, that Congress needs to authorize something like this for it to move forward. We may not hear a decision, though, in this Supreme Court case until June. Maybe what happens until then? How do these protocols, procedures follow it? And maybe why are this decision a few months away?
Yeah, most Supreme Court decisions don't happen until June. I get a little lull as a constitutional analyst until we get to that. June, July, first week of August, we get hit with major decisions, and they like to strategically release them and release them at the end. Until then, though, what Biden's done is he's issued some things about how they're not doing interest, they're not collecting on the loan, so people are comfy until then. But knowing whether you're going to get forgiven $10,000, $20,000 if you have a Pell Grant is a significant change in many people's lives. So leaving people in limbo going into the summer period is very challenging, especially in this challenging economy. So I, again, would like to see Congress do something. We have Democrats in the Senate, Republicans in the House. Let's come together and fix the student loan crisis. That's really what we need.
That is certainly something that would go around the Supreme Court in this regard with student loan forgiveness. Andrew Lieb, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Any parting words you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I think it's very important to realize that the Supreme Court's not making a political decision whether loan forgiveness is good or bad. What they really are making is a procedural decision. And while we at the kitchen table don't see it that way, it's really about legal procedure, and don't read too much into it. Thanks so much.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. Some great insight there, as I know many millions of Americans are invested in this decision that we'll have to wait a few months for. But we appreciate your time here on Live Now.